There are 4,218 PS2 games, and I've got to beat every one of them. I've got to own the game because I'm playing on the original hardware, but I've beefed it up using a RetroTink 5X, some component cables, and more to come soon. Can I do this before I die of old age? I hope so. Ridge Racer 5 was a launch title for the PS2, debuting on October 26, 2000. Namco opted to go for graphical fidelity and the feeling of speed over a more realistic approach, akin to racing simulators like Gran Turismo. As such, the game was shorter and had no story mode, unlike the previous game, Ridge Racer Type 4. With an average score between 7 to 10 and 8 of 10, can I beat this launch title? Most definitely. I had a good time playing Ridge Racer 5, even though it took me just under 3.5 hours to beat the Beginner's Cup and the 4 main cups that get you credits. I wasn't bothered by the fact it wasn't a simulated racing game that felt more realistic. It was still fun to play even though it just boasted graphical fidelity and a sense of speed. It was a launch title after all, and it wasn't even the only launch title by Namco, which is kinda cool. So what does this game consist of if it has so little to offer? We have the standard 5 cups, 1 beginner cup and 4 extra cups, and that gets you to the credits. We also have time trials, and we have some endurance races, as well as during the time trials, you'll see an R next to someone's time. This is your rival. If you can beat your rival's time in the time trials, you then get to duel them in a head-to-head race, and if you win, I'm sure you get some unlocks like cars or engines, maybe even extra track, alternate routes. I'm not really sure what you'd win if you get there, but you can do those things. Since I'm only worried about the credits, I start up the very first beginner cup. I get a choice between several cars. The main difference is the driving type, grip or drift. I did try drift once after I had already tried grip, but I just didn't find it that intuitive for myself. Grip was really the way to go for me, and I'm not sure if that's because I began with grip or if that's just my play style. But it's good to know that there are 2 different types. And as far as I understand, whatever kind of car you pick is the car that you will unlock for the rest of the races. I mean, that seems like the most intuitive way to do it. That way, if someone picks a certain type of car, they don't get the next type for the next race. They get to keep using the type that they're used to. As is tradition with myself in racing games, I picked the very fastest car with the highest acceleration, and I don't care about the handling. I'll figure that out on my own. Now, obviously, I'm not going over each race individually because, well, there are actually only 2 tracks. Instead, I'll just do a quick overview of what I did in those 3.5 hours, because it's really not very much. During the Beginner's Cup and the first 3 extra cups, you'll do the first 2 tracks in the game, the only 2 tracks really, that have alternate routes depending on what the game wants you to play. You race the tracks both forward and backwards at different times during the game, and alternate routes open up so that it throws off your driving. You'll have to figure out which alternate paths they give you during the race itself and adjust accordingly. To win each of the races, there are 4 total. The first race, you have to get at least 4th place. The next race, you have to get at least 3rd place, then 2nd place, then the very last race of a cup, you must get 1st place. In that order each time. Now, as I said before, this is not a racing simulator, so the driving is very interesting. Honestly, it's mostly the turning and braking in this game that differentiates itself from a racing simulator. Maybe the acceleration in the driving just straight down a track feels pretty natural, but when you turn, the game has these kind of 2 options for you. You either have a specific track the game wants you to take, and if you find that track around a corner, it almost locks you in. It's this weird feeling while you're driving that your car slides into it and then sticks, even if you have moved a little bit or you don't feel like you're in the right spot. It almost feels like the game is forcing you into a path, that way you can get around the turn correctly. Or the other option is to just wildly fling yourself around turns and maybe make it, maybe you don't. Maybe you slam into a wall, who knows? It's just an odd feeling, and once you start to drive the track over and over, which you will do, you'll get a feel for some of the turns and you'll be able to slide into that very specific track the game wants you to, and you'll be able to get around the turns pretty easily. I started to realize that there were very specific braking and gas patterns that get me around turns similarly every time I do them. Once I figured them out, I was able to turn around the corner so fast that I'd gain a lot of headway and speed and be able to pass people. Take this turn here. As I come to the turn, I let go of the gas, turn, and about a half a second in, I hit the gas again. This lets my wheels squeal against the pavement and hit the gas at the same time. I lose almost no speed, but I'm still drifting around the corner a little bit. This happens with quite a few of the turns in the game, and I just kind of get used to doing the same thing over and over because it works, and that's great. I think it's an interesting way to do it. This is a much more gamified racing game rather than Gran Turismo, where everything feels dynamic and different each time you do a race. There are so many cars, there are different ways to tune your car, there are different parts. So many variables are included in Gran Turismo that are not in this game. So it's a much more pick up and play racing game that you can have fun with for a little while, and being a launch title helped it look nice and be fun without having to be the best racing game, and still get some people to buy it and have a good time. Now, I did lie about the 2 tracks. There is one more track. The very last cup has you going around an oval. That's it. You have a very, very fast car. It's almost like some kind of NASCAR speedway that you're racing around. You've got to get headway by taking the corners correctly and just keeping your car going forward and as fast as you can at all times. Once you learn how to get around the oval easily in this game, you're done. That's the end of the race. You can get ahead of all the cars in about 3 or 4 laps, and it's only a total of 10 laps, so it's it. That's the last race. That's the last cup. You've beaten the game by this point. Now, as I said before, there are time trials and some endurance races, and during the time trials you have a rival that you can go head-to-head with. I know there are things you can unlock, I don't know what they are, but they probably are more parts for your cars and different cars you can use in each of the cups, allowing you to do different things. This is not a huge game, but for its price point and the time that it was released, it's a solid game. It definitely gets kind of shit on by Gran Turismo players who think, you know, the simulated racing games are better, which I can understand in a realistic point, you know, that it is. But this is still a great pick up and play, cheap game you can get and race and have a fun time. You can figure it out. That's the thing, is you can figure it out and feel accomplished at it quickly and then call it good. You've beaten a racing game without having to sit there for hours and hours on end learning Gran Turismo stuff, which, while that's a great thing to do, my parents did it themselves. They love Gran Turismo. If you just want a quick one and something simple, this is the game to go with. There is no reason to keep this video any longer. I beat game number 53, that's right. And I have to thank Johnny Baghead from Patreon for suggesting this game. He really wanted me to play a launch title and said Ridge Racer is the perfect one. And you know what? I agreed. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. So thank you so much for suggesting this game, dude. I really appreciate it. So let's say a thank you to all the YouTube and Patreon members, as well as everyone who watched the videos, everyone who's in the stream. Just thank you, everyone. I appreciate it so much. This has been a great time, and I hope to see you guys again soon for the next video, which is Rosa Maiden. Take it easy.